Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Dulce. I am the marketing coordinator here at Red River. Today's topic is on Secure EDU and its features with cybersecurity solutions for K through 12. If you have any questions for the presenters, please use the Q&A feature within the WebEx event. We will also be taking questions at the end of the presentation. I will now turn it over to Mukul.
Thank you, Dulce. Hi, everyone. My name is Mukul Mathur. I am the Senior Director of Sales Engineering for Red River. I want to start off by thanking everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedules and investing in learning a little bit about Red River and also about our Secure EDU program that we have developed to safeguard our K through 12 students. I'll be handing it off to Robert and Adam. They will discuss the details of how we can safeguard our students, manage and mitigate, and all the security risks that we face, and also compliance issues. So with that, I'll hand it off to Robert. And please, like Dulce said, please send us your questions, and we'll make sure to address them during the presentation, or we'll make sure we'll get back to you after the presentation with any questions or additional information that you might need. So with that, Robert, thank you.
Thank you, Mukul. I appreciate the invite. Audio and remote being what it is, Adam or team, if there's anything that gets wonky on remote, as we all have had our challenges with remote accesses and browsers and the variety of tools we use to access these things, please let me know. My name is Robert Allende, Security Practice Lead for Red River, and today, along with Adam Find, we'd like to present where we are from a K-12 cyber ready perspective. So before we jump into today's agenda, Adam, would you mind doing a brief introduction on yourself and a little bit of your background, please?
No, Robert, thanks. My name is Adam Find. My current role is Customer Solution Architect at Red River. Formerly, I was the CTO in K-12 for the last 21 years. Most recently, I was the CTO of about a 26,000 student school district. And I've really been doing advanced technical solutions and designs, helping school districts throughout the state of Texas, working with organizational chapters such as COSIN and SETA and those type of organizations to help school districts all over the United States. So my role here is really to help design solutions and help solution architect design for K-12 and K-12 education specifically. Robert, back to you.
Thank you, Adam. And quick background, I've got about a little over 30 years in this experience in this industry, 20 dedicated as security practitioner, mostly focused on policy, procedure, risk management, and setting up overall cybersecurity programs for companies worldwide, generally speaking. So with that, enough about us. Let's talk about you. So for today, we want to cover, a lot of this comes down to managing risk and what to do with the situations and the problems at hand. We're kicking off a new 2021 school year. Some of you have started. Some of you are about ready to start. We're going to talk a little bit about that in terms of the shifting landscape, but in general, we very much would like to thank everybody for taking the time to be on this call. We're not confused in the fact that school years are starting up. Your time is absolutely critical right now, and we just want you to know that we very much appreciate taking the time to get on this. We're going to try to make this as valuable for you as possible. We plan to cover reducing the threat landscape. This is a second part in our series, so some of you may have heard this message the first time. Some of you will be hearing it again, so we're trying to provide enough during this presentation to talk about setting a foundation with Secure EDU, but also there's a few things that are new here that if you've heard this before, I believe you're going to find valuable. So with that, let's talk a little bit about what today's environment is like out there. So this slide is not to basically bring fear, uncertainty, and doubt. What this slide is for is to let's learn from what's happening and see what we can do about it. 2018, about 200 cyber attacks, ransomware, and crypto locker incidents. And this is just what's being reported. We all know there's a lot more out there, but we'll use 200 as a baseline. 2019, that number was northwards of 500, northwards of 650, depending on where you look at it. In 2020, over 400 reported cyber and crypto locker attacks just in the first quarter of 2020. At the end of June, the FBI issued a PIN basically warning school districts that to expect increased activity, especially amidst COVID-19 and the change in landscape, which we're going to touch on here in the next slide. So if we were to bottom line kind of the things that everybody on this call are going through, that's an increased threat landscape, not enough resources to basically do the job, shrinking budgets overall at the end of the day, and having to do more with less, and still making sure that our students, the information, and the people who work at the schools and the administrative staff are protected. If we take a look to see what are some of those things, data breaches and malware are by far top on the list. Things that have caused those events to essentially take place. It generally tends to be social engineering, phishing, and email by far at the top of the list. So, you know, one of the things that we do with Secure EDU is look at, you know, where to spend our money effectively to get the best bang for the buck. And it's really important to be flexible and to utilize as much as we have with what we have. It's not just about buying new technology to make a difference. And so if we look at email security, phishing security, and then typically RDP and SMB, which is how they're getting in to get remote access to plant this malware, that is probably 80%. Those four items are probably 80% of what's happening as a cause of most of the security issues in K-12 right now. Adam, is there something that you would like to touch on in terms of K-12 and what you're seeing from a real world threat perspective out there?
Sure, Robert. One of the things I think that many of you probably have seen, and what Robert brought to light from the attack vectors that school districts are being hit with, you know, in light of what's happened recently with COVID, especially, all of the remote access needs have created additional opportunities, I think, for threat vectors to be able to come into school districts and actually have additional impact. I know there's a couple of districts that down here in Texas that started off the year with crypto locker attacks, and some of those incidents really are going through the mitigation techniques that they could have deployed for those school districts to try to prevent these attacks are things that we talk about from a mitigation perspective, and you know, what's that best bang for the buck, and where do we need to point our efforts, especially in light of the shift that's happened in the last 7 months.
Well, why don't we touch on that? Yeah, why don't we touch on that shift here a little bit? There's two things that we see happening overall, and we tried to make this information as useful because there's many states on the phone right now. There's two shifts happening. The first shift is in compliance. There's a lot of pressure coming down the line to be compliant. Whether you are, in California, seeing some of these. California has 11 new overall cybersecurity initiatives that are pending review right now in the state senate in the state senate, and a handful of those are targeted at K-12. Texas has the SB 820, which is have a security framework, have a risk mitigation, identification and mitigation plan, have a way to notify somebody if something has happened, and make sure that you protect your student PII, and then the normal communication process associated with that if you breach PII, what's happening there. In New York, New York's Ed Law basically heavily focused around PII. And what's critical about these couple of bullets here up top is there are 38 more states right on the heel on releasing initiatives, essentially, that California, Texas, and New York are leading the charge from a cybersecurity perspective. So what I've done between Adam and myself, we have tried to boil some of that down to say, okay, we know that some of these compliance initiatives are coming down the pipe. Yes, there are going to be specific, but there's also a handful of commonalities that you can expect to start planning on today. in order to get yourself ready. And most of these don't necessarily cost money. And we're going to talk about where Secure EDU can help, because we have some free tools out there, because we know budget is the #1 issue. Everybody would love to do more. It's just having the money to do it with that really is, and time really is the big issue. So the first one is have a cybersecurity policy and employ security controls. I cannot emphasize enough the number of times that I've been asked to come into a K-12 and take a look and see what we can do. And first thing I do is I go to their website and I say, can I see your cybersecurity policy that you are advertising to your students, teachers, parents, and staff? And often there's nothing even there, generally speaking. If there is there, it's not necessarily in line with a cybersecurity policy. So the first thing that we can do, and Adam and I are working on a boilerplate overall that can be used for security policy, that if you have nothing, here's a starter pack, something to get started with. So we're hoping within the next 60 days to have that published on our website as a free tool that you can use. But having a cybersecurity policy, there are 2 general types of security controls. There's the NIST cybersecurity framework, or 800-53, one of the 2. That is a very heavy security policy. If you boil up and take the work that the CIS community, Computer for Internet Security Consortium, has put together, we're recommending the top 20. And I have a tool here to show how to make that easier for you guys. That CIS20 is a lightweight approach to get the job done that's realistic for the K-12. We all know about protecting student PII. That's kind of a table stakes, as it were. But the second piece in there, underneath, have a method to know when you've been breached. That's where we start to get into some monitoring service and the capability of, if you got breached at 6 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, would you know it? And then would you have a plan in place to get ready for it? So what some of these compliant initiatives are is know when you've been breached, make sure you have a primary contact that is the collector of the information and will replicate that information so other folks know within your district and then your state of what has basically happened. Have a plan to know and manage your overall cyber risk. One of the things that we're going to talk about here, we have a spreadsheet as a starting point and then additional tools, but organizing your risk, which is really your threats, and then putting them in order. Talk to a lot of schools that just even that fundamental plan is not there in place, and that's absolutely critical for your long term. And then lastly, in these compliance initiatives, have an incident response plan. I'm gonna save that topic for a little bit later because I got a slide dedicated to that, but it's really important to think about if something were to happen, and you should start thinking about a matter of if, when, not if something is gonna happen. So you get to start preparing, like, how are we gonna prepare if something hits? This is what's gonna make the difference between a small forest fire and a large forest fire. And so at the end of the day, ask yourself, based on these initiatives above, how ready are you from a compliance perspective to meet and be ready when these initiatives come, and they are coming. So we're trying to get K-12 ahead of the curve here.
And then Robert, is that list mandatory for every K-12 organization?
Oh. Thank you, Dulce. No, it is not mandatory. Right now, these are practices that we see. If you're in Texas, many of these are under SB 820. The House Bill 3834 that they have is around training. We see California framing up to have these requirements, along with New York, Jersey, overall, from an initiative with the other 38 states. They're all leaning towards this. So they're not currently required in most states, but what we see over the horizon, they're going to be. And so we're trying to help K-12 be ready for it versus being reactive.
Well, and along with that, Robert, I'll say from the national organizations that from COSA and the Consortium of School Networking, those compliance issues and initiatives are really being pushed top down. Those organizations are pushing from the federal level and the state level. All the state chapters that are out there are really pushing to have these, I'm going to call them common sense compliance initiatives and requirements in play. And as you mentioned, it's not a matter of if, but when on this. And also within that, we talked about the response plan.
Thank you, Adam. You're right on touch. I mean, with all your activity in COSA and the CTO Council. So I'm taking enterprise experience in K-12 and you're grounding it with day-to-day K-12 executive and where things are going. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what's happening to both the folks on this call, as everybody knows, but what we can do about it. And that is the remote access shift. Everybody's talked about it. Lots of vendors and solution providers have talked about working remotely, et cetera. And we're somewhere between 80 to 100%. However, if we bring that into a K-12 perspective, some schools are offering, are mandating 100% online, which is a full remote. Some schools are choosing for hybrid, a couple days remote, a couple days campus. Some schools are pushing hard for campus. So what all of this means is if we come up 10,000 feet and put our security binoculars on, what used to be protecting our access for on campus, protecting the information of where we know, protecting who gets access to the network when and their different roles, where we used to have some structure, has now been blown apart. And looking at the different areas of where you now have access to your information and where bad guys can basically get in via man in the middle, compromising of credentials, or being able to now have remote access threat vectors that didn't used to be there 6 months ago. And now that is 80 to 100% of your environment. The entire landscape has changed. So what we're bringing to light is some solutions around review your VPN solution set, deploy network admission control where possible based on role. Ultimately critical, protect DNS. DNS goes down, everything goes down. Really important to protect DNS, and then identify your account access and who is doing what. Adam, I'm going to touch a little bit on stuff on the right, but in order to both mix it up, what are you seeing from a remote access shift and the reality of what's happening out there to schools, et cetera, based on your districts?
The initial shock once school districts closed down in March and talking about VPN and VPN access, you know, many school districts are tailored, and all school districts really are required under federal SEPA law to do internet filtering. And one of the problems and the occurrences within the VPN solution set were, how are we going to tunnel that traffic back? You know, used to we had VPN, remote VPN access specifically for just tunneling light duty traffic for access methodology. Well, now all of a sudden that strategic shift happened and we were tunneling everything. And we saw, as Red River and as talking through other CTOs around Texas, California, et cetera, what we saw was a big break in VPN technology. The VPN that folks had enabled weren't really able to handle the amount of traffic. We talked a lot about protecting DNS and those services that we needed to make sure that we were mitigating so that we weren't sending data out to command and control and botnets and those kinds of things. And those really are critical for the infrastructure as that shifted immediately toward making sure that we had safe, protected access while making sure that we actually had the access that worked. It was pretty critical, I think, at the time. And the districts that we've spoken with and have helped, we've done a lot of help with remote VPN and remote DNS and network policies and practices. What do we want to allow? What do we not want to allow? It was an immediate shift need that had to occur very quickly. And I think we saw a lot of vendors that were supporting additional remote access policies to be able to help schools and other businesses in that realm.
Thanks, Adam. That's a good real-world heads up. The real-world heads up that I wanted to provide on this slide is over to the right. And while we talk about students and technology and security issues, as senior IT leaders, most of which are on this call, I want to bring in some IT techniques that, based on I've seen from schools when I call them up, you know, it's one or two people or very small staff dealing with this. And it's really important to, and I hate to be so direct like this, but I've seen it to where COVID has hit IT staff. What do? If my main one or two people get out and they're out hard, you know, how do I recover from basically the guy who used to keep, or the gal that used to have the keys to the kingdom and understood how this all works, no longer available. There's some traditional disaster recovery techniques that we should be thinking about and employing. Have we tested our solution in the event that, let's not wait for that person to potentially, or an impact to come through and hit us pretty hard? How would we be able to recover it and treat our students? We've got 50,000 students, and our IT admin staff have all been hit hard. What do we do? So there's some things in there in terms of spreading it out and having a relationship with a third party that, should we need it, it's there and in place, not during the event, but been lightly rehearsed and talked about. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is communicating that. Too many poor folks have been having to keep that within the IT world. And I typically ask the question, does the district superintendent know what you're going to do if something goes out? And often the answer, as I hear back, is no. And so it's really important to have these plans communicated. And when I say maintain a risk register, all a risk register can be something as simple as a spreadsheet. This is what we're looking to produce here in the next 30 days and have available. And all that does is identify your core risks. Your risk could be your people. Your risk could be your remote access. The risk could be we don't run a very good patching system, and if something comes out, we're going to get hit pretty hard and fast. But maintaining that risk register and communicating that out outside of the IT world, but to your senior educational staff, can really save the day and make a difference during a time of crisis. So with that, I'd like to introduce Red River's methodology, which is essentially, you can't manage what you can't see. This is our framework overall. I'm just going to spend a minute on this just due to time, but we start to the left, very first and foremost, and I would employ, if you don't have a solid methodology for security, please consider using this framework. First of all, do I have visibility to everything that I need to see? Do I know my devices, my applications, and can I see everything on my network? No, that is the place to start. Second of all, am I properly segmented? What segmented means is that I'm reducing my threat domain to a more manageable level where possible. So I'm separating my user from my staff. I talked to one school, they're running their HR system, their school website, and one other critical function, all from the same set of paired servers. That is a problem just absolutely waiting to happen. Segment that off. And I realize it takes money, but sometimes an ounce of prevention will definitely be worth a pound of cure if you're in a really high critical threat situation. So make sure that you're segmented. Then once you segmented, have the tools to see what's going on inside of these segments. And once that gets going, what Red River basically does, we look at your tools and say, how can we integrate these tools to work better? Right now, too many security organizations are running too many tools to do too many things. So first of all, some consolidation is usually in order. And then once we get to that step, then we automate. And then that's where you start getting more out of your requirements. One example would be we spend our time looking at threats overall, where we can employ, for example, a tool that automates all of the incidents that you're seeing day in, day out, and getting it down to a much more reasonable level using machine learning to really help compress and reduce the amount of threats so you can stay focused on the real issue. That's usually one of the biggest uplifts that we're basically seeing right now. So with everything that we've talked about as a background, just as an overview, this is what Red River's Secure EDU program for K-12 is all about. We've been working hard, coming up on about a year now, focused, dedicated to basically K-12. Simple solutions that are valuable, that provide the ability for you to grow from a security perspective, and working with a partner that you can trust. And by simple, we've bundled a lot of our solution sets that you'll see here shortly, so you only have one thing to remember, but there is a suite of services on the back end. As part of that bundling process, we've worked with OEMs, we've worked with delivery partners and our own Red River teams to trim every hour, every dollar, every budget, every effort, just to make sure that we're delivering the most for your money and that your district can get the most focused value based on what's being delivered. From a security growth perspective, we leverage a security maturity model. And what that basically means is, let's not deliver advanced tools if your district isn't ready for it. Or if your district has been working with security, you've got a good foundation, there's many of them out there, how can we deliver the best value once you have a quality security program, how do we get to the next level? That's where the Secure EDU maturity program helps identify what you have and where you want to go. We've talked to a lot of school districts, and many realistically do not have a short, mid, and long-term plan. We have a motto that, do you know what you're working on today? And then do you know the next thing that once this is done that you should be working on? So for us, our whole security plan is making sure, working with K-12 districts, that we identify what needs to be done today, but everybody on the team knows what's the next thing we're going to work on once this gets completed. And by doing the right thing, that naturally develops trust. So with that, I'd like to talk about the 6 components briefly that make up our Secure EDU framework. Upper left, upper center, I should say, we have the K-12 Security Policy Info Pack. We've developed tools and resources and solution providers through strategic OEMs to making sure that you do have an information security program and policy in place. We can help develop it. We've got some starter packs if you have nothing to get you up and going. And we have people and resources to help implement that. Today, one of the new announcements I'm going to touch on a little bit deeper is the posture assessment service. That's essentially a service to help you identify where you are. I'm going to touch on that here shortly. We have a cybersecurity risk management. We'll be developing these spreadsheets. We're almost done, generally speaking, but we also have the ability conversationally right now to help you sort out risks and where you can spend the best bang for the buck overall for your security program. All of our solutions include enhanced training. Like, for example, Texas HB 3834, you have to do a minimal amount of training and show that you've done that training. We've got tools and resources to help you train your staff and train your folks on security policies and procedures and various state compliance items. We have a core incident response development plan, and we're developing that even more so in terms of refining that to make sure that you get what you need. But typically, we'll work with you to develop the right balance of price and performance so that if you do have a crisis, you immediately know who to call 24 hours a day, because we've at least put some effort in that basic direction. And then lastly, which I'd like to lead into here next, is cyber monitoring and containment overall. And what that is we've developed 3 services. I was one slide ahead of myself, I apologize. We've developed 3 services around cyber monitoring and containing: Cyber Essentials, Defensive Pro, and Elite, 3 levels that are all packaged, bundled up, and price effective to help you with your 24/7 security monitoring. With this, what I'd like to do is introduce the first thing that's new with our Secure EDU for this phase. We are releasing the CIS20 SelfAssessment Pack. And what this is, you might recall, we talked about security frameworks. The Center for Internet Security has looked at NIST framework. They've looked at a various amount of other federal and local compliance frameworks, and have basically come out with these top 20 recommendations saying, if you want to have the best bang for the buck, to be the most effective, use these NIST security controls. And what we've done, we've put documents around how to help pick the right controls, where to start. For example, statistics have shown if you implement the first 5 controls, you're well on your way to mitigate 80% of the security risks and threats that are out there. There's 2 sheets that we're introducing with this. There's the executive assessment, which is the first 5. Those are the first 5 mandatory controls. And then there's the CIS20, which include all 20. We also have a program that helps you identify which way you should go. Everything here is going to be, we tried to have it ready for this website, for this webcast, but it'll be ready early part of next week at redriver.com/secure-edu. They just had to put some final touches on a few things. But in general, it looks something like this. This is just an example to where you have your security control number 1, inventory and control of hard your assets. You go over to the right where the green section is. You hit that drop down that you see in your lower right, and it will tell you, give you a selection. Have I implemented this? Am I okay? Do I have some security controls, or am I fully implemented? And you go through and you do this self-assessment, and by the time it's done, at least with the first 5, you have a realistic understanding of how am I real world from a security controls perspective implemented And this has nothing to do with vendors. This has to do with just pure security controls and framework. How am I realistically? What have I addressed? What risk is still out there? And it builds that wheel on the upper left-hand side. We use that wheel to work with you to determine where to spend the best bang for the buck. So this is the top 5 executive summary version, which we recommend everybody start with the first 5, and it'll help you develop your framework in terms of what you really should be working on. And then, the overall 20, if you're ready to take a bigger bite of the pie, and we can help work with you on that. That paints the broader perspective overall.
And Adam, I want to add here real quick.
Yeah,
if you,
go ahead, buddy.
Specific to the CIS20 and the, thinking about the executive review, one of the things I would encourage you is to make sure that you have really good cross-functional teams when you start looking at this from the assessment of saying, where are we really? In what you do as an organizational business, you really need help from your special education department and your nursing division and your instructional support. And so it really is key when you start going through this to bring those folks together to really help fill out the summary document to say, where are we? Plus, it will provide them with some methodology to go forth with and say, wow, here's some operational deficiencies or some operational areas we really need to address.
Thank you, Adam, because that's the real world. I mean, we could talk about these spreadsheets, but if we don't get together as teams, discuss them, and realistically assess where we are, plus the assessment process starts to get other folks, maybe your firewall guy or person doesn't even really know what a security control is. A lot of folks were tossed into the role, and this helps open up that message of communication. So that's a good call, Adam. Anything else before we move on to our next slide you wanted to touch on, Adam?
No, I think let's move to the next for time's sake.
Okay. So first toolkit that we've thrown out there is the CIS20. Those that were on the previous presentation, we have package 3 cybersecurity programs for K-12. This is, I get 24/7 monitoring, and these programs build on each other. I get 24/7 monitoring. I get the ability to track cyber incidents. I get ability to have managed detection and response professionals on the other end looking at my things overall to see, do I have any suspicious activity? So starting at the top, cyber essentials. Really what we're doing, this is our most cost-effective solution where we put essentially sensors on the network between you and the rest of the world and anywhere else that strategically seems to make sense. And we start looking for command and control traffic, malware traffic, 24/7 incidences that look like they're growing in suspiciousness from a bad actor perspective. We start looking for trends. If you have an incident, there's a team back there to at least initially help you triage some of this stuff and identify. And a lot of times with ransomware, it is, I hate to use a term, but it really is whack-a-mole. You turn on one machine, this new advanced malware is specifically designed. If machine 1 turns on, then machine 2 turns on. Then machine 2 goes quiet intentionally for 3 to 6 weeks, and then machine 3 turns on. They're specifically designed to stage out in their appearance just to basically help you relax a little bit, think everything's okay, and then bam, they come back asking you for more money. I bring this up now because if I were a bad guy, they know that the districts are lean on resources. They know the shift in landscape is basically happening, and they know schools are starting up. And so with that, now is prime time for basically ransomware and money. Anywhere from $10K to $100K seems to be about the range that they're shooting for. So something to keep in mind. Moving on from essentials, we start with Defensive Pro. Now we're layering in select assets, critical assets to be monitoring, but then we're starting to round out what I call the trifecta, which is network management, endpoint management, and critical asset management. If you have visibility of what's happening on the wire, what's happening in your email, which is a huge threat vector, and what's happening specifically to select endpoints, you have a much better perspective overall in terms of real security threats that are creeping over the horizon. That's what Defensive Pro brings into play. We also layer in the option for incident response services of we'll work with you on a program of what's right for you in terms of price and performance. And then for those organizations that simply want just give me the best of the best, that's what Cyber Elite is. Full-blown, every workstation, every asset, every network segment, every email conversation, all 100% fully managed 24/7, a guaranteed SLA response on your incident response times overall. And so this is it literally is it's the high end of the high end for those that demand nothing but the absolute best. But we know realistically most customers this is a little bit much. However, we also use it as a directional roadmap in terms of what could be, and we build it to those programs for those customers that want to eventually get to that level. How we do this, so we're not here to just present a vendor. It takes different tools to do the job through different resources and capabilities. There's over 500 OEM security vendors right now positioning solutions. Red River has partnered with a select few. Every vendor that you see on the screen has made the commitment for K-12 in terms of resources, stretching the price point, stretching the resources, stretching the training and learning credits that go with all of these programs. So this is our essential go-to list. We have other vendors that are participating in this program, but this is our core set. Over to the left are our technology vendors. Over to the right are our managed security service providers that when you're ready to go from just owning the technology to having it managed as you would a traditional service, here's the technologies that we use to make this happen. Now I want to move away a little bit excuse me, from the technology in the managed service realm. This is our second announcement that we're using this call to leverage, and that's our new posture assessment service. And what this posture assessment service is, we've talked to a lot, we do a lot of security assessments, and we've talked to a lot of different customers. However, when we talk to K-12, many of them, they've got great intentions. There's some good technology. A lot of schools just help us on what we need to do next. What should we be doing overall? And this posture assessment service is a way to jumpstart that process. Could you do all this on your own? Well, most likely over time, but we leverage our experience in order to make it happen. And essentially what you get is we review your cybersecurity policy. If you don't have one, we recommend either NIST or CIS20. We will always lean towards CIS20 because of the results that you get and the time to deploy and the simplicity to maintain. It is a monster to maintain the NIST framework, and it's usually too heavy for most environments. So we take a look at that and we provide our recommendations. We do a network assessment internal. We do a network assessment external. We look at where you store your student PII and look for common controls around that in terms of encryption, management, access, transmission and flight, et cetera, and give you a scoring system and recommendations around your PII. We take a look at your monitoring and response capabilities and say, how well are you looking at all aspects of your network, and how ready are you should things hit the fan overall, and you need to respond to this. Where are your weaknesses and where are you good at? We do a dark web recon. Not a lot of people are familiar with the dark web process, but essentially if you are, that's good. You're ahead of the game, because what a dark web recon basically does is it looks over the horizon and say, have you been compromised? Is your information being stored or sold? Are people potentially mounting an attack against you? A lot of times what happens is just because you've been compromised doesn't mean that an issue is going to happen yet. A lot of what happens on the dark web is they will sell your information as a base platform to say we've got, say 25,000 or 45,000 machines compromised. The information is 48 hours old. Here's the droppers that we've basically put on their machines. Who would like to buy it for $5,000 as use it as their platform for what they're going to do with it next? That is the type of forensic information that will help you prevent an attack, knowing that your base information is being sold as a platform for a future attack or crypto locker type of threat. So we do that. Then we put all that information together. We stage that in your critical to stage your risks overall and present that in a format to where we can remediate by priority We do a two-part presentation overall where we present to you, and then we offer to present to your management so they don't just hear it from you alone that, hey, you know, these are some threats. And then we put all that into a short, medium, and long-term recommendations and format. And it looks basically something like this. There's two portions to this program. There's a value bundle. If you're just getting started, that's the way to go. But if you have a little bit of experience, we highly recommend the comprehensive. So there's two options for this, which is basically cost effective and yeah, lift the hood and tell me what I'm really looking at. A little bit tough to see, but over to the right, this is just a snapshot of what our statement of work looks like in terms of the different phases that we go through, and we work with you on each individual phase. But by the time we're done with this, you basically would have identified your critical risks. You create a baseline for your security roadmap that's applicable to your environment, and you have a set of tools that can enhance whatever it is you're doing for cybersecurity, and we help focus in the right direction to build and grow your current program into something to where you want to be. So with that, Adam, you know, you've been a CTO, and I've asked this, we talked about this before. How valuable would something be like this? If somebody can come in and, you know, for either a set price, all this is fixed bid, by the way, so you know what you're getting for and the price doesn't change. How valuable would this have been if somebody can hand you a report and work with you over time to deliver something like this to jumpstart a security program?
Oh, it's an outstanding value from the perspective of a CTO role. In the organizations today, you know, and I know you've all heard this, do more with less. In this realm, it's trying to provide a holistic approach to security and give you a solution that will help you with those baselines to present them to the management folks who are hopefully going to help provide some additional funding to provide some of the resources that are needed. And just the ability to take this holistic approach and say, here's a turnkey solution. Can you guys come in and do all of these things for me so that at the end I have a management report that I can then take up to my board of trustees and my superintendent to say, here's some of the findings, here's some of the opportunities that we really need to close those gaps on to provide extra safety and security for our constituents, which are our students and our parents, right? It's pretty imperative, I think, today to be able to take this and look at it from a holistic approach.
Thanks, Adam, and I appreciate that. And one of the things I want to emphasize is this is not a network port scan or a vulnerability assessment report. No. Yeah, this is not a dig on other folks. However, the days of, you know, here's my 3-page report by priority and port scan, and here's the 40 pages of documents behind it that support, here's all your scan information. We don't want that. I mean, that is okay, and that has some value in its right place, but this is a comprehensive look at a security program overall, and that information, which has typically been those network security reports where somebody else's is 100% of their report, that's about 15% of our overall report. This really is, I want to take a holistic look at my security program, A to Z, and tell me what I need to do. So I just want to put that into perspective. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that feedback. I'm moving along because of time, and I want to be respectful to keep this on. So speaking of which, Adam, would you mind touching on our K-12 cyber protection bundle?
So what I think is a differentiator with what we're doing today is looking at a holistic approach. So talking about the cyber protection bundle, we really take a look at what do you need to put in play to help you with the assessment of where you are, from just saying, here's how we're going to protect these assets and these infrastructure. So when we talk about doing firewall upgrade, using next-gen 24/7 DNS monitoring, bundled install services, and end-user training, what we're saying is, depending on the type of shop you are, you saw the list of OEM partners that we actually have. We'll come in and do an assessment to say, it's not about widget A, widget B, and widget C, but have you thought about these things within a next-gen solution? DNS monitoring, specifically looking at tools like Umbrella and NS1 that can help you with DNS directional applications and, you know, support from preventing zero-day vulnerabilities and command and control, and then looking at, how do we bundle those services to provide you with that real value? Because this really is your first line of defense from the perspective of what you're doing. And within that Cyber Protect bundle, we talk about, additional components. What is it you really need help with? Like Robert mentioned earlier, maybe your firewall guy doesn't really know about controls. So that may be part of the end user training we do. What do you need from an endpoint management perspective? And then we take all of this information and help apply a holistic approach. We want to give you that visibility within your network, making sure that we're doing those functional items within the next-gen solution and doing advanced malware protection. We talked about DNS and what that looks like. So really from the perspective of why you need it, what it is, and then what you can expect out of it, we want to make sure that we're providing those training. We want you to understand the architecture. The professional services really comes from folks who have been doing this in the industry a long, long time. And then we'll do a standard follow-up visit in 6 months to make sure that everything's going as appropriate. And obviously, if you need help sooner, we're there for the long haul. It's not something that we want to just be a one and done. We want to be there and be your trusted partner moving forward.
Thank you. That was an excellent overview. One thing I'd like to touch on, and just from a partner perspective, everybody saw that list of partners. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of time to deal with those partners, and one of the value that we bring to the table is let us be that front-end resource for you. But I will say on the back end, we've had conversations with every single one of those partners. They are applauding the fact that Red River is committing itself to K-12 and putting in all the time and efforts. And I got to say, you can ask our partners. We're happy to bring them in. We are tough on our partners. We want to make sure we put ourselves in your shoes. Adam has decades of experience, as do I, from a vendor management perspective. And these are not just partners for the sake of, hey, let's make a deal. We literally put these folks through the ringer in terms of what are we going to get? What's the value? How's this going to work? Why is K-12 going to benefit this? Is this going to meet our need? We literally structured this program wearing K-12 security administrative shoes while we're doing this, and then went out to create this program overall specific to K-12. And it's not just as a part. We basically were looking to do the entire program. So as we wrap things up here, at the end of the day, it's how do I get the most for my security dollar? How do I basically making sure my $1 that I have is absolutely as effective as it could be, because I don't get many of these dollars specific to security. Every single person on this call knows almost for sure you have more security problems than you do money. So how can I get the best uplift for what it is that we're doing? And that really is what this program intentionally is all about, the most use of your school security dollar. The screen has
and with the unknowns of all the budgets today, especially in light of COVID, we're leaning toward COVID because that's the focus. In light of that, with the unknown specifically, and not knowing what's coming down the pike from the perspective of how we need to provide access for everyone, and we really do try to take a holistic approach. And I hope that's what you're hearing from us as a differentiator from someone who's been in K-12 for a long, long time. And, I've got a number of industry years of experience in healthcare and the electric industry part of that. And just knowing what that comprehensive security package needs to look like. I mean, we really are trying to make sure that we're giving you the most bang for the buck. It's not just about a one and done, as I mentioned earlier. It's about being your trusted partner.
Adam, and with that, let's look at some of these center right items that we've put together based on experience. So if you want to, and this presentation will be available to everybody, but if we want to look at some of the items that we're recommending, of course, look at your remote access solution, but not just do I have a VPN. Consider some of the things that we talked about. But outside of that, do you have a way to monitor your DNS 24/7? Because that's a high hit item right now. How are you doing in terms of access management and monitoring? And do you have a program specifically around that? Email and phishing we talked about is pretty hot. One thing that doesn't get talked about too much is that bottom little bullet, that straggler there at the bottom, which is really important, and that is the OWASP Top 10, the Open Web Application Security Project, if I remember that correctly. If you're not familiar with that, Google OWASP Top 10. The number of times I have been brought in on an incident, for some reason it seems to be heavy at the community college level, but I'm sure at K-12 it's happened. They got through our website through a URL manipulation, and they used SQL injection, which is a very, very old hack. They use SQL injection to pull out all of our HR administrative records. We talk about ransomware and CryptoLocker, but not too far behind that is your banking information. Right now, there's a big push on getting your banking records, falsifying procurement options, so they basically get materials and things shipped to known addresses, and then getting the PII from the HR records. And most of that comes via that little OWASP Top 10 open vulnerability. So I would say, please take a poke at that. And if you're not familiar with it, it will be time well spent. In terms of procedures to the right, it's really important. If you don't know where all your PII is located and documented and what you're doing about it, we highly suggest that. If you don't have an incident response plan or something around that, please contact us or Google, basically, shoot, I need to get an IR program going ASAP. And we would strongly suggest, in terms of help, lean towards a managed service. Let's spread it out a little bit, not have, if possible, try to bring it all in-house, try to lean towards a managed service wherever possible. Adam, do you want to touch on anything else here before we start to wrap this up?
Yeah, just real quick, just going back to the OWASP thing, one of the things that is specific from that realm, I know in a couple of years ago, it's about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there was a specific vulnerability in JBoss and the JBoss application centered around web-facing websites. And we had a number of school districts here in Texas specifically, and really throughout the United States, that their library system, Destiny, which many of you may be running, was compromised through a very easy front-facing script. And they crypto-locked districts all over the U.S. And those are simple things that we really, sometimes we don't go to the websites to learn about the vulnerabilities specific to what those things are looking at and for. And something as simple as a web application firewall, maybe you can't afford the latest and greatest WAF, but it's something from that perspective to help you have a frontline defense that you can say, oh, here's a opportunity, and here's an opportunity that we can close very quickly and easily. So appreciate that list, Robert.
Thank you, sir. Well, it's developed based on all the team's experience. Even though we have Adam and I talking about things on the call today, one of the things I just wanted to touch on in terms of why Red River, we are a reseller of most security OEMs. We are nearing or maybe slightly plus 500 from a staff perspective, a little over $1 billion in profitable revenue as a company, and we deal with a lot of different OEMs. So, we have a lot of pull in terms of working with our manufacturers, wide variety of solutions, and specific to K-12, we focus on quick deployment and easy to use. And if I were to highlight what are some of our values, we're experts at meeting budget requirements. Adam and a few select folks like Adam bring to, while I might consider myself a security expert and practitioner, et cetera, Adam is a specialist at grounding the technology with security budgets and really bring it into a real world sitting behind the desk perspective in terms of what I can afford and how to make this happen. We have a white glove pre-sales engineering perspective, so we have a dedicated SLED team that just does nothing but just state, local, and education, and it's a rather large team. And so we're trying to bring that customer value directly to you. So this is more than just product. Consider Red River as a service extension and trusted advisor overall. And that's really about it. So I wanted to keep us tight on the hour. I know I picked it up a little bit there during the middle, but I wanted to respect everybody's time. Adam, any final thoughts before we transition this over to Dulce to bring us on home?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for their time. I know we're closing in on an hour, but if you guys have any questions or anything that we can help with, we're really here for you. And I hope that, we can be a good dedicated partner for you guys in support of what all the hard work and the remote access support that you guys need in today's age with the COVID-19 functional thing that's occurring throughout the United States, and how can we help staff and students and teachers be safe and secure out there.
Thank you, Adam. And then with that, again, hopefully you felt our passion behind this, and that we're not here to just try to sell you something, as it were, programmatically. We're here for the long term, and Red River is making a genuine long-term investment in K-12 and higher ed. So please take advantage of the efforts that we're doing. There's some very good things on the website right now, and there's going to be a whole list of stuff posted at the beginning of next week. And then in Q4, we've got another round of some pretty good release stuff too that you can take advantage of from a no-cost perspective. So we're trying to both provide solutions and give you some tools that you can work with. And with that, Dulce, I'd like to open it up to see if there's any questions, or I'll hand it over to you to bring us on home.
Is there any final questions anyone wanted to type in? If not, we will also be sending this recording to your email, to everyone that registered, as well as the presentation along with our emails. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Once again, thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time of your day to be here with us.
Thank you, Dulce.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dulce.
Have a nice day. Thanks, guys.